Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us again. So this is our third webinar now. So we're just doing some series to basically share our kind of knowledge and open discussions and go from there. So as you all know, this is based on renovations. So we're just getting out of the strong kind of winter period. And obviously now focus goes into the end of season. So it kind of rolls from one season to another. This always comes around very quickly. Some of you will have already planned for renovations. Some of you are in discussions with clubs. So we just wanted to share kind of our thoughts on little tips and tricks to look into for renovations. Obviously, there's a lot of you from different situations, different environments, which will change. We'll try and cover as much as we can, but we're kind of based predominantly on a very kind of general renovation topic. Okay. I am very thrilled to welcome one of my my dear friends of this industry. I think he has a wealth of knowledge in loads of different environments. He has been a grounds manager. He's worked for a contracting company, one of the best ones in the UK. He has built pitches. He is performance tested. He's consulted on a number of projects, and probably most impressively, he's worked in probably every environment you could put in front of him. So I think Dean is a great person to learn from and speak to if you ever have any issues with something, because Dean has probably seen it. So Dean, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite to come on. Obviously, yes, you're right. I have been fortunate to work all over the world, but it's nice that we've had a good relationship over the years, and everybody has different ways of dealing with things. I'd never confess to being the best, never will, but it's something that I think it's a strong point that we've been part of. You know, we've been able to construct, maintain, do the renovations throughout the year. It's come across some massive challenges, and so I thank you for giving me the honour. I don't think I've ever been described as a dear friend before. Maybe choice words from other people sometimes I'll come across, but not dear friend. So yeah, thank you for the invite anyway.
I had to keep it PC, mate, with the audience. So yeah. And obviously, most of you know me a little bit. So I'm the former head groundsman of Arsenal Football Club. Done plenty of renovations since then. I founded Stadia, where I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, and I work with a number of clubs all over the world. On a consultancy level, but obviously on a performance testing level as well. So this is to basically share some knowledge. It's our opinions. So yeah, we're not right for everything. We don't claim to be right for everything. People have different ways of doing it, but this is kind of how we feel a good renovation process will go. Okay. So yeah, we've got a number of slides. They are translated underneath, so there is a lot of text on there, but obviously the webinar is going to be predominantly in English, because me and Dean are ignorant English and Welshmen who don't speak many languages. So
French is not so bad.
Yeah, you could do the French bits there, mate, and then so I guess a question that I have when I go around to a lot of clubs, especially when talking at kind of management level, but also performance staff, it gets to this time of year and they look out the window and the pitches are just starting to turn, they're just starting to improve, just starting to become green again. And the question is, why do we need a renovation? Can we get it through another season? Do we really need to spend this cost when the pitch is looking, you know, in a good place? So it's important to kind of deflect their memories back to December and January when you're in their meetings, when the pitch was starting to look maybe at its worst point with usage and drainage and weather and all the kind of other things that you go through. And it's important to realize that the renovation is not just about the way the surface looks, it's about how it's going to perform the next season. So a big thing that we kind of say is that it's a performance reset of the field. It's you want to carry out a good renovation to guarantee that optimal performance the next season. I would probably say, Dean. Yeah.
It's also your platform for next season as well. Without that renovation, your platform is already in a backward step, isn't it? So it's about trying to get that playing surface, performance surface to the optimum before you start the season yet again.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, I've seen many pitches that haven't been renovated. So they get to this point, they think they're in a good place, they choose not to renovate, and they try and take it through another winter. Obviously, you build up a lot of organic material throughout the year, and sometimes it's masked by grass coverage towards the end of the season, and you kind of forget about it. But it comes back with a vengeance in November when you start to lose that coverage again, and you see the amount of slime in there, which really restricts the studs being able to penetrate into the soil. So surfaces become more slippery, but also moisture moves slower through that layer, so drainage levels decrease as well. So especially if you're in a stadium environment, it becomes very tricky to manage throughout another winter period. So
sorry, man, just to re-emphasize on that, I mean, you're right, with the surface becoming slippy, that's what people don't understand. The following year, that playing surface does become a lot more greasier. You get a build-up of organic matter for sure, because the organic matter will never decrease, it will only ever increase. And then with that as well is that invasion of weed grasses, which tends to colonize those particular areas itself. So those are the three main factors for sure.
Yeah, no, perfect. Okay. So there's a lot of text on this slide, but I kind of base on kind of 4 pillars on how to build a case to the club, because obviously it is a cost. It is something that the club has to agree, and it's kind of down to the club and the grounds team to come up with a case of why you need to renovate, the scope of what you need to include in them works, and the kind of timeline for doing the process. So the first thing you need to set is your kind of objective, like why do you need to do the renovation? So as we've just discussed, a performance increase is massive. Like if you want to guarantee a better playing surface for the next season, the renovation is probably the most important aspect going into that season to carry out. As me and Dean have mentioned, the drainage increase, most places have severe rainfall, as most of us have experienced over this winter. To give your pitch the best capability to cope with it, you need to carry out that renovation to guarantee optimal drainage rates. Being able to have consistent surface firmness throughout the year also has an impact on the amount of organic, the amount of moisture your soil has throughout the season. One thing for you, Dean, with your work now with SIS grass is obviously exposing the fibers again. Like I go to a few places where they have a hybrid stitch field, they then don't renovate, and obviously it doesn't perform as well the next season. So I think the emphasis on a renovation for hybrid fields, which maybe obviously your expertise can come in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the other one, what people don't realize is once those fibers are buried, the interaction of the stud, and that's the main purpose of stitching anyway, is the interaction of the stud with the actual surface itself and with those fibers. If those fibers are buried, you don't get that reassurance of the footing for the player. So yeah, for sure, you need to ensure that the fibers are and back from out of the soil at the end of the renovation.
Yeah. Obviously, it kind of blows my mind sometimes that someone would install a pitch for that kind of cost and then choose not to renovate for, you know, a much smaller cost the following year, to kind of ensure the performance of that asset.
Yeah, it does happen too much, and it is frustrating. I mean, not even from a SIS point of view. It's frustrating from a groundsman kind of point of view. I understand sometimes that our remits that people can't afford to do it. There's cost savings here and there, but getting those fibres is so key to making sure that the players studs are interacting with the surface itself.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously event damage. So if you have external events at the end of the season, could be a reason to renovate the surface as well. Obviously, selfishly, it's probably not, but gathering data throughout the year to help build your case to the club, like why do you need a renovation? Well, you know, when the sun is shining, the pitches are looking good. Sometimes it's good to look back at objective data to show the curves and show the kind of downside to the surfaces throughout the winter, like why you need to renovate during that process. Like if it's just based on a decision by eye at certain points of the season, then sometimes it's very hard to build your case and get your point across. So it's good to go on, mate.
Data is king at the end of the day. I mean, both of us are background, as you mentioned earlier on, our backgrounds were ground staff, but my background as a groundsman, I always data recorded everything, and I know you did that in Arsenal as well. Data is king. That's the information we can pass on. And sadly, the team managers, everybody we work around, they all work off data anyway. So you're talking their language sometimes, rather than going in explaining scientifically why that pitch is a problem. You're using the data as evidence, and they'll interpret that better than us speaking to them.
Absolutely. So a key metric that I really advise you to measure, especially before you renovate. So at the end of the season, measure your drainage rates, because then when you remeasure after the renovation, so at the start of the season or during the summer, you can really see the benefit of why you did that renovation. How much have you increased that drainage rate from the end of the season to the start of the season, and then again do it throughout the winter. So when it's at its lowest, you can then really monitor that trend of drainage throughout the different periods throughout the year. Another one is the density of grass, so the consistency of density through the winter, how it improves during this time of year, but then how it improves week by week after the renovation. So you can see when the pitch is back to 100% density again after you've seeded. It's a crucial metric because each year you're going to probably get your timing clipped. They're going to try and take a week away from you for events and stuff like that. And it's something that you can show, well, actually, it takes us 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever it might be, to get back to 100% density again. So that's also a key metric to consider. I also like to keep track of usage levels, just so you can compare from one season to another. All reasons why density can maybe decrease or increase, you want to kind of track them throughout the season. And that also goes into your case. Okay, the pitch looks fine now, but we had 5 less usages, but we still need to do a renovation, or our performance is going to suffer the following season. You then need to go through your scope. So once you've presented to whoever you need to present to, the objective and gathering data, you then need to define the scope. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Dean, but I go to a few clubs that they just let the contractor define the scope and kind of do whatever they kind of want. And sometimes everyone goes on holiday and just lets the contractor do their thing, and it kills me because I feel this is your one opportunity to make sure that your pitch is, you know, in the best possible condition for the season.
You're right. You need to be there as a groundsman. You 100% need to be there. And yeah, I'm with you. I know ground staff will go on vacation during that period. And for me, that's the most important time. You want to make sure that the sad thing is, again, you know, I am a contractor as well now, but I like the idea of the attention to detail, the finer things in life. But sometimes you won't always get that with a contractor. They'll come in and get out as quick as they can. You need to be there. You need to make sure every single aspect of that renovation is done to your recommendations, not to theirs, because they'll come in, get the job done as quick as they can to go on to the next job, where you actually want to make sure it's done correct because you're the one that has to deal with it the following year. And the problem is, if it does fail the following year, you can't blame the contractor, then you've taken over that. So it is in your interest to be there for sure.
And then you've got to assess the timeline and the risk of the timeline. So it's a question I get asked a lot. Like, and we'll get into these in a bit more detail. But obviously, every situation is different. Some people have quite a long summer and have a lot of time. Some people have very short windows. And I get asked a lot, like, should I renovate or should I not, based on the timeline? So I always would renovate no matter what and deal with what you have after that, because I think it's so important for the longevity. I think a lot of clubs focus on the readiness for the first game without thinking about the whole season performance after that. So you might have another 30, 40, 50 games after that first usage that also warrants as much consideration as that very first game, that maybe after 3-4 weeks after a renovation. So it's something that you've got to really think about: the growing duration, the weather conditions, which obviously you have a lot of experience with, Dean, like being able to do a renovation in all different kind of environments.
Yeah, sure. No, you're right. You're 100% right. I think the other one people have to consider as well, it does depend. I mean, if you're looking at an Arsenal, you have to have 100% grass coverage at the start of the season. However, there are certain scenarios where you might not have the luxury because the time window isn't there, but you know you've still got a growing window as well. So you can still grow even after your first match. The grass is still growing, so you can still push the plant along. So it depends on what your environment is to see what your capabilities are.
Absolutely. So we're going to focus on kind of each individual process throughout, and just talk in a bit of detail about it. So obviously we start off with that grass removal process. So corring off, or however you kind of want to call it, depending on kind of which type of surface you have, I guess which machine is best to use to remove the grass coverage, the vegetation of it. So generally, obviously, the Corrie Field top maker is probably, I would say, one of the big kind of game changers of our industry over the last couple of decades, I guess. You know, I remember renovations where you really had to have a specialized contractor come in and had to really take good care and be very decent at what you do. I think these machines, the amount they've improved over the years, and the introduction of obviously the universal rotor for hybrid systems has opened the floor to be even able to do renovations in-house. Not, I wouldn't say low level knowledge, but it certainly makes it much easier to do, I'd say, Dean.
Yeah. I mean, weirdly enough, there's something. Well, I know there's a few groundsmen at the moment starting to push and do the in-house renovations, and for me, that speaks volumes, because it isn't as scary as what people think it is sometimes. You know, the initial outlay is quite expensive, but after you purchase that machinery, doing it in-house, you can do it when you want to do the pitch. You can do it in the right conditions. You've got more attention to detail than that company coming in and just calling off and coming out. I'm not talking myself out of a job, because there's plenty of work out there for full contractors anyway. But there are also specialized groundsmen. I know personally, when I do renovations, especially when I've worked in south of France, I wanted to do them in-house because I had more control over it. I think it's key.
Absolutely. So you can pick the weather conditions, like the timing you do it. You can take your time with it, because obviously sometimes, you know, it's contractors can rush the job because they're going on to the next one and stuff like that. So you can take a bit more care. The key consideration, or the key thing to start with, is choosing your depth that you're going to go at. I personally don't like to go all guns blazing. I do on a lot of things, but when you're removing the grass, I like to be quite cautious. Do a few meters first, check the depths again, do another few meters, check the depth again. And once you're really happy that you're not exposing too much fibers or going too deep with the corro, removing too much of the soil, especially, then I'm happy.
Yeah, Reece, on that, one key factor of that again is once you're doing the renovations, that corro machine, if it's coming in from anywhere else, ensure it's as clean as it can possibly be before you come, because the whole idea of a corro is to remove unwanted grass species. The whole idea of that corro is to clean up vegetation from that surface. There's a potential of migrating nematodes across, and I know when we first had when I first started corroing, I think it was the Liberty Stadium, we had nematodes, and you're trying to figure out what that problem is. But if the machine wasn't coming in clean, then it potentially could have come through the machines. So that's, for me, a key one. It's something we tend to do. We'll do some renovations, then immediately after we clean that corro machine down. Also, if you're the first corro machine for that season, you want to make sure there's brand new tines on that corro machine as well. But you're right in your preparations. Otherwise, it's succulent seeds smaller. I like personally. Again, I like a couple of passes. Sometimes it's not, because it's a schedule. You want to get in and get out. But I personally prefer 2 passes at least. And the reasoning behind that is the first pass is to clean up, and you're constantly throwing the grass or the horizons where the grass is. So you're picking up the seed heads, and then the second pass you're hopefully cleaning up that surface and tightening it up.
Yeah, with the multiple passes, I think the key thing is not to expose too much fiber, not to go too deep. You can kind of control the action. You're not working the machine overly hard, which can obviously cause other issues. So yeah, I think a couple of passes, and that's where you can really define the scope to the contractor to say, I don't want to go all guns blazing on the first pass and then realize I've exposed too much fibers and I've got a problem that I'm going to have to manage for the rest of the lifespan of the pitch. But yeah, 100% agree with the cleaning of the machinery, for everything. You want to avoid any contamination from other venues. So it's a key consideration, and it's something that I think every contractor should also make sure when they're arriving on site, the equipment is clean and obviously time's changed and all the rest of it. Preparing the site, it's another thing. There's going to be a lot of machinery moving in and out. Making sure contractors have a clear run to wherever they need to dump the spoil and access it. Making sure areas are fenced off and there's not just going to be random people walking in the way and all the rest of it. Just making sure that site's prepared for these kind of works, I think makes just life a lot more easier. Making sure the routes aren't too ridiculous, like taking the spoil. You want tractors to be on and off the field as quickly as possible, dumping everything the best you can. And then my last point was, last 2 points, removing all grass. I see a lot where people leave the edges, leave around goal sockets, leave around sprinkler heads. I personally really don't like that. I think you should remove all grass from all areas and then rework the levels in after. Just spending that extra bit of time doing that makes so much of a difference, especially when you're growing in and the season after.
Even to a point, taking out the centre sprinkler heads to make sure you've got a nice clean. It's a lot easier to cut out the sprinkler heads, take the sprinkler heads out, and then collar the whole surface rather than trying to scratch out around the sprinkler heads afterwards. It is definitely much easier.
Absolutely. And then after the works, check all the inspect, and this is why you need to be on site, or you need a consultant or someone there that can specifically say, I'm happy with how clean this is, all the stitching is fine, we don't need to hand stitch any areas, which generally you normally do. Maybe a few areas you need to hand stitch again. Checking your irrigation heads that everything is working still, your sockets are still intact, the levels are all okay, because that is the point where you want to do any works. If you're going to have to dig anything out, it's when you don't have grass on the pitch is when you want to be doing it. If you check in after you've put the sand on and the seed on, you've got a big problem there. Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of questions. Let me just so what are the key reasons for delayed renovations in your experience?
You answer? Sorry.
And do you think equipment is cleaned enough between venues to reduce the risk of introducing grey leaf spot? Key reasons for delayed renovations. The key reasons, I guess, generally are cost or timelines, I imagine. So if maybe there's an event or there's a friendly game put in, and all of a sudden you have maybe 3 to 4 weeks to do a renovation process, or maybe less or more, that's generally a time when people start thinking, do we not do a renovation, or do we delay a renovation from that period? Yeah, I still feel try and do it as much as you can to and maybe the pitch isn't fully ready for that first usage, but after then, as Dean said, you can continue to grow grass after that, and you can continue to develop the pitch. But for the rest of the season, it's going to be a much better place if you do a renovation than not. You can also look at turfing options and stuff like that if the event or game can cover that cost. And then for grey leaf spot, yeah, it's a very prominent topic, I guess, all over Europe at the minute.
Yeah.
So yes, anything that you can do to prevent bringing stuff into your site, I think, is beneficial if you can clean the machinery. Obviously, if you're bringing contaminated soil from one site, whatever it might be, like Dean said, it could be disease spores, it could be nematodes, it could be weed grasses. If you're bringing that in soil and dumping it into your venue, you are increasing the risk in the future for you from there. So it is just a very simple step that can probably lower the risk a fair amount.
Yep.
Would you agree, Dean?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, you're never going to get it spotlessly clean, but you'll certainly reduce it if they do pressure wash and clean as much as they can, for sure. Yeah.
It's you're just doing everything to reduce any risk.
Yeah, it's mitigating risk. It's all about. Yeah, you're not going to eliminate the fact, but you're going to mitigate it for sure. You can reduce the chances, yeah, of spread for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So after we've cleaned away and we've done our checks, it's all about sand dressing. So getting that sand on. I get asked a question a lot, and for you, Dean, it's also, I can imagine you have the same thing. Sand is not just sand. So when I go to some venues, especially around Europe and other places around the world, they say, oh, don't worry, we've got good sand, we can bring in good sand. And then they bring it in and it's completely different to what you have installed into the pitch, and probably not the desired sand of what you would want.
Yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, yeah, that is one of the biggest issues we have with regards to sand. Everybody thinks that their sand is good enough. We do try to stick to USGS specification only because the guidelines are quite good. But yeah, if you get too much fines, and it's weird working across the world. Probably one of the hardest places to find sand at one point for a stadium was in Egypt, surrounded by a desert, but still one of the hardest places to find the correct sand, one of my favorite sands was actually in the Gujarat region in India, which is crazy, served a massive purpose for what we were trying to do. But yeah, you're right, there's so many different varieties of sand.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes bad sand in the desert, so sometimes you do have to sell sand to
yeah. It's the fight. I mean, if you're looking at stitching, if you look at the wrong sand type for stitching, you can easily have a problem with the stitching not bonding to that surface. So the chances of the fibers being pulled out after the stitching can be down to the sand. There's even things like if you're using the finer particles of sand, then it depends what drainage system they're putting in. You could block up drains and things, and block up the porosity of the surface as well. So yeah, they definitely need to look at that.
Yeah, so just check the compatibility of sand of what you already have. You want consistency in your root zone. You kind of don't want varied particle sizes, as Dean said. You don't want very fines with medium, with coarse, because then everything gets locked together. So try and find a compatible sand of what you're putting on to your profile. Wet or kiln dried sand. So I went through a phase of my life where I really liked using kiln dried sand. So I would very expensively buy in kiln dried sand because I thought, well, it's not going to bring any more nematodes to my pitch and the rest of it, and it's very easy to work with. But then I realized the cost of it was far outweighing the benefit of it, so I went back to just putting on wet sand. I don't know for you, Dean, if you have a preference, but obviously kiln dried is easier to get in the holes and work with, but is it really worth the money?
No, you're right. And again, you just hit the nail on the head. Is everything we do is of detriment to the pitch, but the benefits outweigh the detriment. So you want to kind of look at the cost side of it, isn't it? There is no benefit then to going down the lines of kiln drying sand. Well, USGS specification sand would be just as suitable. It is that risk, but we can deal with that. We can definitely manage that for sure now.
Yeah. And then a question I get asked a lot as well is how much sand should I put on? I kind of always go around the 100 tons mark for a hybrid surface, and then it can vary depending on your natural surfaces. I've seen some go quite a lot higher than that, but I just feel the risk of burying fibers and the rest of it become quite a lot. So yeah, I kind of
with the sand again, it's pretty much bespoke to that renovation. For us, for me, especially when we're doing a renovation, you can go high. Depends how much you're taking out. It genuinely does depend on how much you're taking out. We're looking at doing a renovation in Malta, and we're going to take out about 25 mil of organic matter. So 100 ton will not suit. So we're going to go higher. So what we'll keep on doing is constantly measuring the height of the fibers, apply the sand, work it in, get the fibers back up, and keep on measuring the height until I'm comfortable with 15 mil of fibers sticking out. So in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if we put up to a 200 ton, but I'll ensure that we get the fibers sticking out for sure.
And if you go deeper, Dean, on the fibers, do you? Because I kind of feel you never get that stability back in the fiber. Like if you go too deep, you expose too much fiber and then try and top dress in, you can never get the stability that you get when you first kind of stitch in. Is that a fair thing to say, or?
I think more than anything, maybe anecdotal that, because last year I want to say I took off at least, well, not at least 30 mil, but yeah, it was about 30 mil in one venue. We put on the amount, the right amount of sand to make sure we had then say, so it would have been at least 150 ton on top kind of thing as an example. But off the top of my head, that pitch played the best it's ever played the following year. So yeah, you could be right, but I've also seen scenarios where as long as you put the right product back on, we've not seen that problem.
And I think sometimes it comes to the type of fiber as well, I guess. Like
yeah.
I think that's one of the benefits of obviously your fiber. It's obviously a slightly stronger fiber maybe than other fibers as well, which helps being able to work that sand back in.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more upright, that's for sure. And I think that's from an honest observation as well, not through a sales kind of point. It's because I have worked with the other products. I have been quite close with the other products over the years as well. And for me, I do like the turgidness of what SIS Grass has to offer.
Perfect. And then obviously the objective is to dilute the organic material that you have and restore porosity. So increase that drainage again, freshen up the root zone again, and dilute that organic material that you've got in there. Another thing that I used to like to do, obviously we get into aeration in a minute, because for me the whole objective of putting the sand in, you get the aeration holes in and you get that sand brushed into the holes. You don't want it just sitting on top of on the surface. You want the organic material is getting deeper into that soil, so you want to freshen it up. So you want to get that sand into the holes. But I always like to put more sand in my goal areas, my linesman runs, around sprinkler heads, and do extra aeration and create extra holes and brush extra sand in your kind of key compacted zones that you know is going to be a problem for you the next season, just to try and freshen them up a little bit more. And then for the brushing, another trick that I used to do, so when I talk about holes, well, actually I'll get into aeration first. I see a lot of people verti-draining their pitches in renovation, which I agree with. It needs to be done. But for me, the objective, especially for the sand, is getting as many holes in that top kind of layer where you've got the organic, as many holes in that layer as possible, and getting as much sand in this layer as possible as well. So I always follow a verti-drain with a Procore or a couple of Procores, with new tines on a really slow setting, just to get as many holes in as possible in that top layer. And then when I go to brush it in, I always reverse the tractor brush first. So I've seen a few times they drive normally over the pitch, but obviously the tractor wheels will close the holes before you have a chance to brush any sand in. So I always used to reverse the tractor first to brush as much sand in the holes as possible, and then go back over the other way as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because, no, you're right. That makes valid sense. It's a good tip for them for sure. Also, it's one of them ones. It's a question of, some people used to put the sand down first and aerate, and other people put aerate and then put the sand down. And you're right with the closing the holes. Personally, I prefer, without doubt, the sand, and using the machine to vibrate and get the sand into that as dry as you can. But other people do it different ways, and it's not wrong. You know, there's plenty of ways to skin the cat, and that's the beauty of our job as well, isn't it? It isn't just one. What we're saying isn't final. It's lots of different ways of doing these kind of jobs, and that is definitely a good tip for sure. Yeah.
And then obviously finish levels is critical. I always used to love using a lute to get the final levels around the edges and stuff. It was one of my my favorite parts of doing it. Like
weirdly enough, the tractor mounted lute is one of the cheapest tools to buy, but it 100% does a job, and it's very good for lifting fibers as well. When you've got that, when you're putting the lute on and it's dry, you will get the fibers to lift up as well. So it's I'm exactly the same as you there. Lute wise, practically in every job I can, even a hand lute. I would always have a hand lute for the repairs of the penalty areas or something like that for sure. The referees areas too. Linesman, sorry.
Dean, we've got a couple of questions that we'll just tackle now before we head on, if that's okay. So we have one asking about what about 50% renovations, for example, for youth training grounds. So I think they mean like light renovations. Is that something that you would recommend?
Well, ideally, we'd always recommend a full core off because you clean everything up. However, if budget restraints are stopping them, yeah, it's, I've been in scenarios where I've worked in conditions where the temperatures drop massively during the winter and go extremely hot during the summer. So you have to then do a kind of golf renovation where you'll do a mini renovation in October and a mini renovation in maybe April when the weather conditions are more suitable. It's horses for courses. If they haven't got the budget and they can't do a full job, then a 50% renovation is better than 0% renovation. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's key to look at the objective of what you're trying to achieve. So obviously, trying to dilute organic material, trying to remove weed grasses, maybe whatever it might be. Look at them objectives and really kind of focus on that on the renovation. And obviously, as you say, Dean, yeah, anything is better than nothing. Obviously, ideally, you go for the full one, but if you only go for a 50%, just really focus on the objectives of what you set out, and then obviously there might be a limitation for the next season that you also need to consider. Maybe the drainage isn't going to be as good as a full renovation or whatever it might be. So they're the considerations to have. But yeah, obviously a well planned, a well carried out light renovation and multiple light renovations throughout the season is also a consideration.
And even if you've got the target areas where maybe you have too much organic matter in certain places, or you just go a little bit heavier. So yeah, a 50% with an additional cleanup in some of the worst areas, then that's not a problem. That can work too. Obviously, ideally, we're going to stick with Corwin. We want to clean the whole surface off, but budget restraints could stop that for sure.
And then what do you do if the existing sand for a root zone is the wrong material and not matching the sand dressing during renovation? Obviously, you want consistency, I would say. So I would look at a different sand for the renovation to try and match the root zone that you have. If that's a bad sand already, and you've got problems already, yeah, you're in quite a bad place, I guess.
Yeah. If it's a stitch pitch, you've got problems for sure, yes. If it's not a stitch pitch, there's a potential of you could dilute, you could ameliorate new sands into that surface. So there are, yeah, but it depends on what the venue is. If you're stitched, it's going to be very difficult for sure.
Yeah, I think, as you say, you can turn over fresh sand in to freshen up the root zone or dilute what's there already. But if you're stitched, you can't fully improve what's there now with top dressing on the top. Like I would probably.
It's all. This is where we go back to then the consultancy side of it. It's always important for any venue. Different with the Premiership, because the Premiership guys are pretty much their own consultants sometimes as well. But once you're looking international, they need the extra. Sometimes they need support. I mean, again, there's some fantastic groundsmen internationally, so I don't want to kind of discredit, but there are certain places where if you're having a new construction, maybe they don't understand the new construction, getting a consultant in to support them with that installation is key as well, because it will protect them going forward for sure. And these things could be mitigated then prior to the actual renovation or the construction, sorry.
Absolutely, mate, yeah. So then after the sand process, and obviously you've stood up the fibers or finished the levels, whatever you might do, we go into the seeding kind of process. First of all, is the seed selection, I guess, is a key consideration. And obviously, Dean, you'll have your thinking behind this as well. Generally, I look at the climate, I look at the timeline of the growing. I look at the environment, so stadium to non-stadium and the rest of it. And I look at like the STRI handbooks or any information that I can get that will give me something which will showcase the kind of seed types that I should select. Is that fair to say?
All of the above, you're right, mate. Yes, and even to a point yesterday, we're looking at putting different seeds in to some different countries at the moment, and we're kind of trying to look at what we can use to make that work, even in warm climates, extreme climates. We're trying to look at bringing in cooler season grasses because it suits what the client's requirements are. But in that, we're looking at them bringing in fans. With that, we're looking at the SIS shade, where we've got shade sheets covering the stadium pretty much to keep the temperatures down, to try and keep the cool grass growing. This particular area we're talking about at the moment it's only extreme, and I mean extreme, it does go extremely hot for May, June, July, August. And then after that, you could manage with cooler season grass species. So we do actually want to kind of, we've done a due diligence in that venue, and we think we could possibly get a cool season plant growing in them conditions if we introduce the shade, if we introduce the ventilation systems and things like that. It's a challenge, but that's everything we face nowadays is a challenge. So grass species, yes, you're right. STRI for sure. Use that, and you've got to understand where you are. And in fairness, 90% or probably 100% of the ground staff will know exactly what they can use in that region. But you want to look at the best cultivars for that region too. So if it is cool season grass, then it's the best cultivars. If it's warm season grass, you want to use the best cultivars.
Absolutely. A question I get asked as well is RPR, so the regenerating ryegrass aspect of stuff. And I'm not going to get into politics or anything like that, but I feel if you're doing a yearly renovation, then it's something probably not that you'll benefit from, I guess.
I've never personally never seen the benefit. I mean, other people could. For me, I think we get what we want out of the tetraploids and diploids for sure. I don't see a massive benefit of the RPR at the moment. I understand what they're trying to do. However, for a sports stadium or training grounds, I think we're overly used, and I've very rarely seen the benefits of it for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, when you're selecting your cultivars, I like to have a bit of variety, which I think most do. So I'll probably generally I seed in a few directions with a diploid mix, and then I might do 1 or 2 directions with a tetraploid mix, just to give that variety as well, but also mixing up the cultivars, looking at the highest kind of performing ones on the STRI list. I always feel spend a little bit more money on your seed to guarantee a high quality, because you're going to be putting on that bag anyway. And the better seed you put on, the more likely you are of a better performing surface that you're going to have to manage for the next year. So try not to go for a cheap seed, I guess. One story that I had, it wasn't a cheap seed. I did go for a high quality seed, but it was contaminated with mustard seeds. So we had millions of yeah, we had millions of little mustard seed weeds in our pitch, which was not the most fun summer I've ever had from that. So really check the purity, make sure the seed is clean, it's a good quality, and it makes a massive difference, I feel.
Yeah, I agreed.
Seeding rate, Dean, I guess, is another big question, and it's one that I feel quite strongly about, and sometimes I have a different view to a lot of other people, and maybe I've got a different view to you as well, Dean, but I feel less is more sometimes. So I generally go for a seed rate of between 40 and 45 grams per meter square. I see a lot of people going between 50 and 60 grams per meter square, so a lot more a lot more seed going down. I go less because I like to have space for the plant to develop. And I also feel the more plants you put in, obviously people want thick grass, which obviously you'll still get thick grass with 40 to 45 grams per meter square. But with more grass, you get more organic material. It's much harder to clean between the plants and all the rest of it. So that's
increase
why I
risk
kind
of
of like
disease also.
Yeah, so I go maybe a little bit less than maybe some people would in that environment. I don't know what your opinion is, Dean.
No, I'm with you. It depends on circumstances. If we're trying to force a pitch on, we will go higher for sure. If we have the time, less is more, and I 100% agree. Because weirdly enough, I mean, background consultancy, as you know as well, but once you're doing a FIFA assessment, you need to have 90% grass coverage. And for me, I don't think that's the optimum. It looks good, don't get me wrong, but having 85% where you've got the airflow and you're reducing that risk of disease, for me, is far better for that playing surface, for the plant health, than having 100% grass cover, 120% grass cover. It's air movement. It's what we're trying to do is mitigate the risk of disease, and the more grass you're opening that surface or that area for humidity, for sure.
Yeah, I think people are sometimes surprised when they see some of my pitches. Like you could see a little bit of a tiny bit of soil around each plant, like and obviously not a lot of soil, because then you'd have another problem. But I like to see a little bit of space around kind of each plant, which I felt was easier for me to deal with.
You get a stronger, healthier plant. Yeah, you're right. They're not combating against anything.
And less organic. I always give the for some reason I always say this, but when you go into a really busy bar, when you're packed and you're crammed up and you're trying to have a drink, like it's not very nice. You want a bit of space around you. So I kind of always use that analogy for some stupid reason, but
no, I mean, a lot of things we talk about, we try to make it layman's terms to allow the people around us, especially when we're trying to educate directors of the stadium. You do go to that layman's terms, and that's a perfect analogy for sure.
And then obviously the application, another thing that I really specify, and contractors hate me for it, but I always want to go 5 directions with seeding. I like to go, I've kind of put a diagram on the screen. So my first run is straight up, so a straight line. And then my second run is one goalpost to the other goalpost. The third run is the other goalpost to the other goalpost on the side. And then the fourth and fifth runs are diagonal. So I always like to finish on a diagonal, because I feel you never then see the seeding lines. If you finish on a lengthways run, I feel the whole season you see the seeding line. So I always like to go 5 directions, because I just feel you have much better coverage. You have less chance of missing areas, and yeah, it just comes through much better when you do it that way, I feel.
Here's one. Do you dimple and slit? Do you recommend dimple and slit?
I personally, when there's no grass on the pitch, I fully dimple. And then if there is grass on the pitch, I would prefer to slit. So that's kind of how I do it. But I know other people do it differently.
Yeah, it is down to preference. For me, I'm not a big fan of using slit, especially when it comes to stitching systems. I don't like it where the fibers are, because I feel as if the roller, the slitting machine would push the fibers back down in the surface. Again, it's all anecdotal. It doesn't mean I'm right by saying it. So I know some very good groundsmen that do use slitting seeders on hybrid surfaces for sure, and I've had very successful results. For me personally, I prefer dimple.
Yeah. I feel sometimes when you have grass on the pitch and organic and all the rest of it, like the slit just makes sure it gets the seed where you want it. Whereas sometimes the dimple doesn't have. Obviously, you can put weights and stuff on the back, but I don't feel it gets in there as much. But again, it's everyone's preference. But yeah, I just recommend going more and spending your time doing it. Do not rush that job.
Yeah.
Even if it takes you an extra day doing the seeding at the end, make it take the extra day, because you're going to have to manage that pitch for the next week, throwing it in.
100%, yeah.
Check your bloody seed as well. I've had a few people that have done a few runs, forgot to check the seed, and done a few runs without having any seed in the seeder. So yeah, every now and again, just make sure you've still got seed before you carry on.
And calibrate too. Yeah, for sure. You want to calibrate the seeder.
Yeah, if you put all your seed on your first run, then you've got another problem. Another problem coming. And then just moisten the soil when you do it as well. Like really dry sand, you'll find it very hard to see where you've been. So try and moisten the soil regularly while you're seeding, if that's possible. It just helps you get your lines and helps you seed properly. Okay. And then we go into the growing phase. We're getting close on time, but we're getting nearer to the end now. But yeah, the growing is obviously very important, and I kind of split it up into 4 phases. So the first phase is your germination. Now, I'll probably say something controversial now that every fertilizer rep in the world will hate me for it, but I feel you don't need any fertilizer to germinate seed. I feel you need temperature and you need moisture to germinate the seed. And I feel sometimes when you fertilize heavily during the renovation, you then water heavily to germinate the field. And generally on most sand-based pitches, that fertilizer has been flushed through before you even have a plant to be able to uptake it. So I would much rather focus on moisture content and making sure you have an even moisture content in the soil, rather than focusing on fertilizer and feeding.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if you.
I do agree with you, and well, I do agree with you as a groundsman's point of view. Maybe with us, we do tend to put pre-seed fertilizer down, but no, I'm 100%. And also, what people don't realize, that seed has roughly, it has equivalent to, I think it's 2 weeks of growth fertilizer, natural fertilizer inside it when it's starting to grow anyway. What I do tend to do is wait for it to start popping up. When I see it popping up, then I'll get a feed in there for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, make sure. Another thing, I go to a lot of venues where they've had problems with germination, problems with growing, and I would say, well, I'd probably say 100% of them have irrigation issues. So you'll always find your irrigation problems when you really need it most. So when it's very hot, you'll start to see the rings of drought stress and stuff like that. But when you're trying to germinate seed, you'll see any issues with your irrigation system. So don't just set it and go home, or set it early in the morning before you've come in. Make sure someone is there to watch the irrigation system come around, to make sure you're getting the full coverage of moisture, because consistent moisture is going to be your key for a consistent germination. So really focus on that, I would say.
Ideally, prior to the start of the germination period, you want to audit that surface as well. I think or audit the irrigation system. Sorry, it will definitely. It's something similar. It's same with the undersoil heating. You want to keep on auditing it, because you'll only ever need it when you need it. Same with the irrigation. You don't want to start growing that plant and the irrigation system go down. So getting that service before your renovation period is without doubt key to a success.
Absolutely. And then we move into phase 2, which is obviously establishment. So as Dean said, that's where I'd start applying my fertilizer. You've got a plant now, so fertilizer can be taken up by the plant, and I would reduce the irrigation frequencies. So you've achieved the germination. So with your higher frequency of irrigation, and then I would reduce it once you've got a plant, because then you've got to start thinking of disease pressures and the rest of it. So monitor your moisture levels and make sure the plant has what it needs, but don't overwater during that period as well.
Yeah.
Question for you, Dean. First cuts. How, when?
I tend to, again, it's my personal preference, and it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong, probably. I look for the bite. I'll look to see how that plant is. It's difficult to explain. Obviously, a lot of groundsmen on you will understand, but you try to feel that bite. When you feel that plant has got a good bite, I'll happily cut. Here's the other one, contentious one. Do you cut with cylinder or do you cut with rotary? Personally, again, I prefer rotary. And the only reason why that I cannot explain, but is as if it rips the plant and it causes the plant then to thicken out straight afterwards. So I'll give it a rotary cut and then apply fertilizer immediately afterwards. And that seems to, I've had some very good results of that. So feed, rotary, and cut, fertilize, and it does seem to bounce back. But it doesn't mean that's the right way. That's my personal preference. That's what I prefer. Cylinder, I've done cylinder way before. Just had similar
I feel sometimes with the cylinder mowers, you obviously fan the plant, and obviously when it's at that seeded state, or new state, young state, the fanning of the cylinder pushes the leaf over, and you don't get a clean cut. So I would agree with you with the rotaries, you end up getting a cleaner cut. With the rotary at that phase, until the plant is strong enough to withstand that fanning of the cylinder mower. So I would 100% agree with that.
I think it's anecdotal at the end of the day. There's no factual evidence behind what I'm saying. It's just what I've seen over the years, and for me, that's what we tend to do. If you see a technique that you feel is better, you stick with it. You know, I document everything I do, everything I do. And I'm pretty sure everybody else does. And I've always found that's the best result for me, so I've stuck with it.
Absolutely. So then, and then we go into phase 3, building the strength of the plants. That's when you're starting to get to 3, 4, 5 leaf stage, whatever it might be. You're starting to build the strength. So increase the mowing frequency. Every time you mow, you're developing the plant again. Start thinking about organic material then as well. So every time you mow, you're thickening the plant, but that plant is going to start shedding leaves soon. You're going to drop clippings, all the rest of it. So start thinking about your canopy health at that stage. You need to think about it early and not too late to when you can actually see it. When you can see it, it's then gone. You can't improve it again. So really start thinking, maybe even putting a top dress on at an early stage to start helping dilute that layer, I would say. Obviously increase the nutrition, but try not to force the plant. Like a lot of people go for a hell of a lot of nitrogen, really trying to pump it full, but you end up filling the plant with water. Essentially, it starts to become very lush, and again, you're increasing the disease risk. So really try and tailor it through, keep it a steady growth rather than trying to force it. Obviously, depends on your situation. If you've got a problem and you've got a game in a week, you might have a different theory, but yeah, just try and build the strength in a consistent way, I would say.
Yeah.
And then phase 4, you're going into your preparation for your first usage. So as I've said, track the density until you've got to the point of where you're happy to play a game on it. Start performance tests in the field. I always feel the first usage is the most scary because you're kind of confident that it's going to play well, but you don't fully know until you've seen it play. So I think that's the most nerve-wracking game of the season.
I tell you what, you don't want to be a rugby groundsman in that scenario. A rugby groundsman with a natural pitch, that was the biggest poison chalice ever, because as you say, you don't know until you know, until that first game's on. You try to do everything. No groundsman's out there to make their pitch fail, but you still have that air of caution. You're still a bit weary about how that pitch plays. And you're right then with performance testing. I used to deliberately take root measurements throughout the year so I knew where I was, even as early as once the germination started going. maybe not that first week, but a couple of weeks in, just to try and see what we could do to push that route down, because without route, we had nothing, especially for a natural pitch or a non-reinforced pitch, you know. So yeah, no, you're right, data recording is key for sure.
Absolutely. It just gives you that confidence that it's going to perform well, or you can prepare people if you feel that it's not going to maybe perform as well as maybe it did last season. You've got something to compare it to. And then obviously the site preparation. So I used to love the putting the new goals together, new nets, cleaning corner flags, like just preparing the site again for a fresh season. So spend a bit of time getting everything fresh again. It makes a big difference, cleaning up all the areas surrounding the pitch, making sure there's nothing left over from the summer there, like just refreshing everything, to pressure washing the tracks and all the rest of it, like give it a really good cleanup.
Attention to detail, you can't beat it. I mean, that's what sometimes defines the best from maybe not the best kind of thing. It is the attention to detail, isn't it? Going for absolute perfection. We'll never ever achieve it, but we'll always push for it, you know. So yeah, little things like that, cleaning machines, cleaning around the surfaces, cleaning the post, yeah, for sure. Painting the post in some cases as well. Depends where you are.
And it depends. It depends how your summer has gone for your pitch, I guess. But I also recommend. I'm not so much of a social media person, or like or whatever it might be, but I recommend getting someone with a good camera, like the club photographer, or someone to take pictures on your first mark out. It should be when the pitch is looking at its best on a sunny day, and some of the photos you get will be a special moment for you for forever. So I do recommend you celebrate that first mark out, and you record that memory with photos. I would always recommend.
It's definitely one of the only jobs in the world where job satisfaction is from what you produce. You know, sometimes salary, yes, okay, we all talk about salary and things like that, but your best CV, your best moment sometimes is going up in that stand, just sitting down. I don't like putting the irrigation on, going up and sitting in the stand with the sun glowing and looking down at that pitch coming through that, taking that photo as well. It's just the best times, you know, summertime, quiet stadium, nobody else there, just you there, 7 o'clock in the night, for argument's sake, and just looking and seeing that grass grow. Yeah, photographs is the best, without doubt, CV. And yeah, the feeling you get that you just grown all those little babies into adults and she's ready for the season, you know?
Yeah, I think it's especially our industry, we don't celebrate our wins enough sometimes. We focus on the negatives and go from there. But yeah, definitely try and celebrate your wins when you can.
Agreed.
So we have one more slide, I think, but I think we just wanted to reiterate that renovation is not just maintenance, it is a performance reset. So if you keep that mentality, especially when you're talking to your staff, especially performance staff, the rest of it, if your players are suffering from slipping, or you're suffering from drainage issues or anything, just remember that renovation is key to reset that performance for the following season. So it is critical for that. Okay. And then our last slide, we just wanted to go over the calendar feature. So another thing that I think is sometimes overlooked, and maybe you can reiterate that, Dean, is obviously recording what you do. I feel it's super important to look back and track and analyze trends for things like usage, even mowing, fertilizing, like being able to look back on records that you've had and going in throughout the renovation periods. What did I do last year? Like, did this work? Did it not work? Like being able to record that, track it, and then analyze that the following year can be really critical. And it's also good to share with others as well, like the amount of usage that you've had, maybe the amount of hours that you've put in, like all these things. If you don't record it, you cannot present it, I would say.
100%.
So yeah, monitor on the calendar. You can log all your usages, your fertilizer inputs, aeration, all the rest of it. Keep track throughout the season, because then you can report on it. Okay. Well, we've made it through, Dean. We're only 10 minutes. When we first had this conversation, we thought we'd be 3 hours over. So, yeah, we've done quite well with that, I think.
I left you talk. It was good, mate. It was good. The problem is, if I get carried away, I'll get probably carried away. Yeah, that was good, mate. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to us as well. Yeah,
thank you so much, everyone. Obviously, huge thanks, Dean, for joining. Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to him, we'll also share his email. He's got loads of experience. So if you ever need anyone to chat to, he's there. I'm also here from Raw Stadia side as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.